Have you ever felt like your entire life has turned into a stage? Every post, every move, every word performed not for yourself, but for a crowd that doesn't even care. You smile when you're tired, explain when you shouldn't, and measure your worth by reactions from people who forgot your name 5 minutes after meeting you. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The person watching you the closest is you. You've become your own critic, your own audience, your own jailer, constantly performing, constantly defending, constantly explaining. And yet, you never feel at peace, because no matter how much you perform, the applause never comes. But what if silence was your way out? What if real power wasn't improving, posting, or reacting, but in withdrawing, focusing, and building quietly until your results speak louder than your words? In this video, you'll discover 7 Stoic rules that can completely transform the way you move through the world. These principles will help you detach from the chaos, reclaim your focus, and rebuild your life from the inside out. And stay with me until the end, because I'll reveal one silent mistake that destroys 90% of people who try to live authentically. They think they've found peace, but they've only found another performance. The question is, will you keep performing for the world? Or will you finally start building for yourself? We live in a world that rewards noise. Every thought must be posted, every achievement announced, every emotion turned into content. But in this constant performance, we've lost something essential: our connection to ourselves. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics lived in chaos towards politics, betrayal, but their greatest battles were internal. They discovered something we've almost forgotten today: that the person who can stay calm when everything around them is loud holds the real power. They called it prohairesis, the disciplined focus on what's within your control, and the refusal to waste energy on what isn't. It's not about running away from life. It's about standing still when the world shakes. It's not about being silent because you're weak. It's about being silent because you're in command. That's what this episode is about. We'll explore 7 ancient rules the Stoics used to maintain clarity and inner strength, written for the modern age. Starve the noise, stop feeding on other people's chaos, and hear your own thoughts again. Move like nobody is watching. Live authentically, not performatively. Keep your energy expensive. Guard your emotional currency. Kill the echo chamber. Seek challenge over comfort. Watch, don't react. Master the pause between stimulus and response. Turn your back on clout. Build substance, not an image. Protect your comeback story. Grow in silence until your results speak. Each rule builds upon the last. Skip one, and the others won't hold. By the end, you'll have a complete framework to build a life so centered and self-directed that other people's opinions become background noise. But before we begin, set one intention. You're not here to collect quotes, you're here to reclaim control. Attention is your most valuable asset, and wherever it goes, your life follows. The Stoics treated attention the way warriors treat a blade kept sharp, used with intention, and never handed to strangers. As you listen, audit your life in real time. Which app steals your mornings? Which conversation always leaves you drained? Which invisible audience keeps you from acting boldly? Name them, because what you won't name, you can't change. Also, expect resistance. The ego hates silence because silence exposes what's real. When you stop performing, you start noticing the patterns that quietly sabotage you: the reflex to please, to explain, to be seen. This isn't a personality makeover. It's a power shift from external noise to internal command. And one more promise: this won't be abstract. Each rule comes with clear tests and real-world exercises you can apply today. If you commit, you won't need to tell anyone you've changed. They'll feel it when their chaos no longer moves you, when your no is clean, and when your presence becomes heavier. Not loud, just undeniable. So take a breath. Let the noise fade for a moment, and get ready to rebuild from the inside out. Because when you master the art of silence, you don't disappear. You become someone the world can no longer ignore. Every single morning, within minutes of opening your eyes, you make a decision that will determine whether you own your day or your day owns you. But here's the problem. You don't even realize you're making it. Before your feet touch the floor, your thumb reaches for your phone. You check notifications. You scroll headlines. You absorb other people's emotions before you've even met your own. Just like that, before your first cup of coffee, you fed the monster. That monster has many names: news, gossip, social media, comparison, but its diet is always the same: your attention. It feeds on every click, every reaction, every second of outrage you give it. The more you feed it, the stronger it grows and the weaker you become. The Stoics knew this danger long before screens existed. Epictetus, once a slave, later a philosopher, said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." He wasn't just talking about money. He meant mental wealth, freedom from the endless craving for stimulation. To the Stoics, the mind was sacred ground. Only the worthy were allowed to enter. But today, we've left the gates wide open. Anyone can walk in. Advertisers, influencers, critics, strangers, each planting seeds in our thoughts. And because we no longer protect our mental space, we wake up tired, distracted, anxious, without knowing why. If you want to reclaim your power, it starts here. Not with doing more, but with cutting off what doesn't deserve you. The truth is, most people aren't exhausted because they're doing too much. They're exhausted because they're absorbing too much. Every headline, every opinion, every argument they scroll past leaves a mark, tiny cuts on the mind that eventually bleed into anxiety, distraction, and self-doubt. They wake up already tired because they've been running mental marathons in other people's worlds. The Stoics understood that peace isn't found by adding more, it's found by subtracting what's unnecessary. Why? They treated silence not as emptiness, but as fuel. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire, wrote his private thoughts in complete solitude. No audience, no filters, no likes. He knew that clarity is born in quiet. So how do you start starving the noise in a world that never stops shouting? Begin with what I call the sacred morning. How the first 60 minutes after you wake up belong to you and you alone. No phone, no news, no messages. Instead, write, walk, breathe, or simply sit in stillness. Those minutes are not luxury, they're maintenance for your mind. Then practice opinion fasting. When someone throws unsolicited advice or judgment your way, let it pass through you like water through a screen. Smile, nod, and let it go. You are not required to carry every opinion tossed in your direction. Silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you stopped letting random voices rent space in your head. Protect your attention as fiercely as you protect your home, because the wrong visitor can wreck both. There's one more step. Defend nothing to no one. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you choose to live. You don't need to justify your goals, your pace, or your peace. Most people defend their choices because they still seek permission to live their own lives. But the moment you stop defending, you start living. When you starve the noise, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear a voice that's been drowned out for you as your own. You start remembering what you actually want, not what others have programmed you to chase. Your own thoughts become more interesting than the drama of others. You no longer bounce between moods, opinions, and expectations like an emotional ping-pong ball. You become steady and shakable, not because you've hardened, but because you've rooted yourself in truth. Right now, identify one source of noise that's draining you. That constant notification feed. That person who always has something negative to say. That social account that makes you feel inadequate. Cut it off today. Unfollow. Mute. Leave. Whatever it takes. Notice how much mental space that single act creates. You will realize that silence isn't emptiness, it's clarity. Because in a world addicted to noise, your stillness becomes your strength. While others chase relevance, you will be building peace. And in time, that peace will become power. So the next time your phone lights up, pause before you reach for it. Ask yourself, does this deserve my attention? If the answer isn't a clear yes, let silence answer for you. There's an invisible audience living inside your head. They sit in the front row of every decision you make, judging, whispering, predicting what they might think if you step out of line. And here's the painful irony. Most of these spectators don't even exist. They're ghosts formed by old criticism, social pressure, and childhood conditioning haunting every bold idea you've ever had. You know that moment when you're about to do something brave. Start a business, change your style, speak up, or walk away from something that drains you. But then a thought slips in. What will people think? And just like that, the moment dies. Not because you lacked talent or clarity, but because you were paralyzed by an audience that isn't even real. Seneca once said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." But most people never reach their new beginning because they're too afraid to end the performance they've been putting on for everyone else. We've spent so long pretending to be confident that we've forgotten how to be genuine. The Stoics called this authentic action, acting from your true nature, not from the fear of judgment. They believed that freedom isn't granted by society. It's reclaimed from your own hesitation. When you move like nobody is watching, something remarkable happens. You start moving differently, not to impress, not to please, but to express. That's when your life begins to align with your values, not other people's expectations. And alignment, not applause, is what creates real confidence. Here's what will set you free. Those people you think are constantly evaluating your choices are too busy managing their own insecurities to care about yours. You've been living like the main character in everyone else's story when in reality, you're barely a background thought in most of their lives. They scroll past, they move on, and you're still replaying the scene. When you realize this, a massive weight lifts. You no longer need to perform, explain, or overthink every move. You begin to act from the center of your being, not from the edge of anxiety. But breaking this mental habit takes practice. Start with what the Stoics might call a reality check ritual. The next time your mind whispers, "What will people think?" stop and answer the question, which people? Exactly. Name them. Why does their opinion matter more than your authenticity? You'll quickly realize you can't name anyone specific because the audience you fear is mostly imaginary. Then, perform the authentic action test before making any decision. Ask, am I doing this to express myself or to manage someone else's reaction? If it's the latter, pause and realign. It's okay to start small. Wear that outfit that feels like you. Post that piece of work that reflects who you are, not what trends demand. Speak up once in the next meeting. Even if your voice shakes, each authentic act is a muscle fiber in your courage. And courage, like any muscle, grows stronger the more you use it. Over time, it becomes second nature, not to impress, but to be real. Here's the paradox. When you finally move like nobody is watching, people start paying attention for the right reasons. Authenticity is magnetic. When others see someone who acts without constantly seeking approval, it awakens something deep inside them, a reminder of the freedom they've lost. You become proof that it's possible to live without masks. But make no mistake, not everyone will celebrate your authenticity. Some will feel threatened by it. They've built their lives around imitation, and your honesty exposes their performance. That's fine. Their discomfort isn't your problem to solve, it's their invitation to grow. You are not responsible for managing other people's reactions to your truth. You are only responsible for living it. The most tragic outcome is to reach the end of your life and realize you spent it performing for an audience that was never even watching. The Stoics would tell you, be your own witness. Let your conscience be the audience you perform for. Live in such a way that if your actions were recorded and played back to you alone, you'd still be proud. So, drop the curtain. Step off the stage. Do something today that feels authentic, even if no one claps for it. Speak when silence feels dishonest. Stay silent when noise adds nothing. Dress, act, create, and love like nobody's watching, because in truth, nobody is, and that's your freedom. To live from your authentic center, not from the borrowed fears of the crowd. Here's a truth that will change how you see everything. Your energy is currency, and every day, most people spend it like they have an unlimited supply. They hand it out to everyone, colleagues, gossip, headlines, toxic conversations, until there's nothing left for themselves. Then they wonder why they feel drained, unmotivated, or resentful. Imagine waking up each morning with exactly $100 of energy in your pocket. How are you spending it? A few dollars on frustration with traffic, 10 on worrying about what someone said last week, 20 more scrolling through other people's lives. By the time you sit down to do something that actually matters, you're bankrupt. Marcus Aurelius ruled one of the largest empires in history. Yet he understood this perfectly. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He knew that scattering your energy across time, past regrets, future fears, and other people's problems dilutes your strength in the only moment you can truly control. Now, when you treat your energy as precious and finite, every decision becomes intentional. You stop saying yes to everything just to appear kind. You stop engaging in drama just to feel included. You stop chasing every opportunity that doesn't align with your values. The Stoics weren't cold. They were strategic. They understood that to show up fully for what truly matters, you must stop showing up halfway for everything else. Because your peace isn't free, it's paid for with attention, and your attention is priceless. The modern world teaches you to spend your energy carelessly. It tells you to answer every message, join every conversation, and be available to everyone, because saying no might make you seem selfish. But here's the truth the Stoics understood. You can't give what you no longer have. Generosity without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. When you give away your attention too freely, people start treating it as cheap. And the cheaper your energy becomes, the less impact it carries. Have you ever noticed that the calm, grounded person in the room, the one who speaks little, but with intention, commands more respect than the one who constantly explains and reacts? That's not luck, that's economy. They've learned the art of energy investment, not energy leakage. So, before you spend another ounce of your energy, apply what I call the value filter. Ask yourself, will this add genuine value to my life or to the lives of people I care about? If the answer isn't a clear yes, it's a no. Next, perform the motivation check. Am I doing this from guilt, fear, or obligation, or from genuine alignment with my values? Finally, the opportunity cost question. Is this the best use of my energy right now? Or am I just avoiding something more meaningful? Once you start filtering your decisions like this, something powerful happens. You stop chasing and start choosing. You become deliberate instead of reactive. And that deliberate focus used wisely is what the Stoics called true freedom. Keeping your energy expensive doesn't mean building walls, it means setting gates. Walls keep everything out, even what could help you grow. Gates let in what deserves to be there and close to what doesn't. That's how the Stoics lived, open-hearted, but never open-drained. Seneca wrote letters to his friends, but rarely entertained the crowd. He understood that too much exposure dilutes wisdom. Modern life reverses that logic. Everyone shouts into the void, hoping to be heard. while their inner voice grows weaker by the day. But wisdom doesn't shout. It listens, selects, and speaks only when it's worth spending energy. When you keep your energy expensive, you begin to see relationships differently. Not everyone deserves front row access to your life. Some belong in the balcony, some outside the theater entirely. And that's okay. Love people deeply, but don't let everyone drain you freely. Start practicing what I call the clean no. It's not the defensive, over-explained I'm sorry, I can't. It's the calm, clear no. That doesn't align with me right now. No justification, no guilt, no debate. The first time you say it, you'll feel uneasy. The second time, you'll feel lighter. And eventually, you'll feel free. Because every clean no creates room for a meaningful yes. The Stoics would remind you, every minute spent on something trivial is stolen from something eternal. Spend wisely, guard fiercely, live intentionally. When you begin treating your energy like wealth, something extraordinary happens. People start treating it that way too. Your time, your words, your presence, they all become more valuable because they're no longer scattered. When you're not always available, your availability becomes sacred. When you speak less, your words begin to carry weight. And when you choose carefully what to care about, your care becomes priceless. This is not arrogance. It's awareness. The Stoics believed that the greatest generosity comes from discipline. You can't offer peace to others while living in chaos yourself. You can't lift others when you're emotionally bankrupt. So the next time guilt whispers that you should do more, remember, you serve the world best when you serve from wholeness, not depletion. Take inventory right now. Where are you leaking energy? Is it that friend who calls only to complain but never listens? That group chat full of gossip you never needed? That late night scroll that numbs instead of nourishes? Cut one of them off today, just one. Then notice the silence that follows. That silence is not empty, it's power returning home. Because when you keep your energy expensive, you stop being a reactor and start becoming a creator. You begin to build a life by design, not by default. And those who once drained you will begin to sense it. That calm, grounded presence of someone who finally values their own light. Right now, you're living inside a bubble. And before you deny it, so is everyone else. It's not just politics or opinions. It's the quiet comfort of being surrounded only by voices that sound like yours. You scroll through familiar takes, talk to familiar people, consume familiar content, and slowly, without realizing it, your world starts shrinking. The Stoics warn about this kind of mental stagnation 2,000 years ago. Socrates, the teacher of all Western philosophy, built his entire life around one radical idea. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That sentence shattered the illusion of certainty. While everyone else argued to be right, Socrates asked questions to stay free. The modern echo chamber does the opposite. It makes you feel wise while keeping you ignorant. It rewards quick agreement, not honest reflection. And it tricks you into mistaking repetition for truth. The more you hear the same thing, the more you believe it even when it's wrong. The Stoics called this illusion a kind of intellectual addiction, a craving for a validation disguised as conviction. They knew that the mind grows only through contrast, through friction, through being challenged. A sword doesn't get sharper by resting against velvet. It needs the grindstone. So, if you want to think clearly, to see truth instead of comfort, it's time to break the bubble, to step beyond the familiar noise and enter the space where real growth begins. Discomfort. Your echo chamber isn't just online, it's everywhere. It's in the friends who nod at every complaint, but never challenge your blind spots. It's in the routines you've repeated for years because they feel safe. It's in the podcasts, books, and influencers who constantly tell you you're right. And over time, comfort disguises itself as wisdom. But comfort is the enemy of growth. When everyone around you thinks, acts, and believes the same way, you stop evolving. You become a more sophisticated version of your old self instead of the wiser version you're meant to be. It's like polishing a mirror that only reflects your own face. You see the same image, just shinier. The Stoics practiced what they called intellectual humility, the courage to admit that your current perspective might be incomplete. They didn't fear being wrong. They feared being closed. That's why great thinkers like Epictetus would deliberately seek debates with people who disagreed with them. Not to win, but to see. Killing your echo chamber doesn't mean surrounding yourself with negativity. It means seeking out people and ideas that stretch your thinking. Not to argue, but to understand. You don't have to agree with everyone, but you must be willing to listen. Because listening doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous to ignorance, to bias, to stagnation. The moment you stop needing everyone to echo your beliefs, you start hearing truth again. And truth, as the Stoics knew, is what makes a person unstoppable. So, how do you actually escape the echo chamber? It starts with your mental diet, the information you consume every single day. If all you feed your mind are opinions that agree with yours, you're not learning your self-soothing. The Stoics would call that a slow death of the intellect. Begin by questioning your habits. What are you reading? Who are you listening to? What conversations are you repeating? If every answer points back to the same perspective, it's time to diversify your mind. Read a book from someone you disagree with, but read to understand, not to destroy. Listen to someone from a different background, generation, or worldview. You will be surprised how much wisdom hides in places you were taught to ignore. Socrates walked the streets of Athens not to preach, but to ask questions. He turned every interaction into an opportunity to challenge assumptions, including his own. That's why the Stoics admired him. He proved that strength of mind comes from humility, not certainty. In the digital age, humility is rebellion. Algorithms want you predictable, easy to categorize, easy to influence. But every time you pause before reacting, every time you question what you believe, you're breaking free from that system. Your goal isn't to be right, it's to be awake. Because the person who constantly seeks truth, even when it's uncomfortable, becomes someone the world can't manipulate. When you finally step outside your echo chamber, something powerful happens. You stop mistaking agreement for connection. You begin to value depth over comfort, honesty over approval, and you realize that disagreement, when rooted in respect, isn't division, its expansion. The Stoics thrived on this principle. They believed that growth requires friction, that truth reveals itself only through testing. Marcus Aurelius often wrote reminders to himself like, accept correction from anyone who shows you where you've gone wrong. He didn't see feedback as insult, he saw it as refinement. That's how he sharpened both his judgment and his character. So here's your modern challenge. Expose yourself to constructive tension every week. Talk to someone who sees the world differently. Read an opposing opinion without rage. Seek a mentor who tells you the truth, not just what you want to hear. And most importantly, challenge your own thoughts daily. Ask, what if I'm wrong? Not as a confession, but as an act of courage. When you kill the echo chamber, your mind becomes like tempered steel, tested, resilient, unbreakable. You no longer need the comfort of constant agreement to feel secure. You start to crave reality, not validation, and in that shift, you rediscover something priceless: freedom of thought. Because true intelligence isn't knowing more, it's being open enough to keep learning. The echo chamber keeps you comfortable, but discomfort, the right kind, keeps you alive. Picture this. Someone says something that stings. Before your brain has even processed it, your mouth fires back, or your fingers start typing a reply you'll regret in 5 minutes. Later, when the adrenaline fades, you feel that familiar mix of frustration and guilt. You didn't want to react that way, but it just happened. Sound familiar? We live in an age of instant reaction. Scroll, respond, repeat. But here's the truth. The more reactive you are, the easier you are to control. Anyone who can trigger your emotions controls your attention. That's why the Stoics build their entire philosophy on mastering the pause between what happens and how you respond. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. It's a simple line, but it's one of the hardest truths to live by, because it means accepting full responsibility for your inner state. No matter how unfair the world feels, the Stoics trained themselves to observe first, act second. They knew that reaction is instinct, but response is power. They learned to stand in the gap between stimulus and reaction, and in that tiny space, they found freedom. You can do the same. Start by noticing your triggers instead of fighting them. Awareness breaks automatic patterns, because once you can see your reaction forming, you can choose something better, and that choice made in silence is where your strength begins. When you start observing instead of reacting, life slows down in the best way possible. You begin to notice that most of your anger isn't about what's happening, it's about what's already living inside you. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you explode not because of the car, but because you are already full of tension, resentment, and unspoken frustration. Their action was just the match. The fire was already built. The Stoics trained for these moments deliberately. They saw every inconvenience as an exercise, a test of composure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, remind yourself, you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial. But none of them can harm you if you choose not to be harmed." That wasn't cynicism, it was preparation. He refused to be surprised by chaos because he understood that expectation, not circumstance, creates suffering. Try this next time your emotions flare. Pause for 3 conscious breaths. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale slowly. That's all it takes to interrupt the storm. Then ask yourself 3 Stoic questions. Is this within my control? Will reacting improve the outcome? Is this worth my peace? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And that no is the space where wisdom grows. Because every second you wait before reacting is a second where the world loses control over you and you regain control over yourself. Watching doesn't mean suppressing your emotions, it means understanding them. You still feel anger, frustration, disappointment. But instead of being swept away by them, you become the observer. You see the emotion rise, peak, and fade without attaching a story to it. This is emotional alchemy, the ability to transform reaction into reflection. The Stoics were masters of this. They didn't aim to be numb. They aimed to be aware. They understood that feelings are information, not instruction. Your anger tells you something is misaligned. Your fear warns you of potential loss. Your sadness reveals what you value, but none of these emotions should be handed the steering wheel dot, so the next time someone insults you, betrays you, or tries to provoke you, watch your heartbeat quicken. Watch your thoughts start to defend. Then ask, what's really being threatened here, my ego or my peace? Almost always, it's the ego. When you learn to separate your worth from other people's behavior, you become untouchable. Their chaos stops being your chaos. Their urgency stops becoming your emergency. You move through life like a mountain, aware of the weather, unmoved by the storm. That's the essence of Stoic calm. Not coldness, but composure. Because in silence, your perception sharpens. And the one who can watch without reacting doesn't just survive chaos, they command it. Let's talk about the most seductive addiction of our time. It doesn't come in a bottle or a pill. You don't buy it, you scroll it. It's called Clout, and it's destroying more dreams than failure ever could. Clout is the illusion of significance. It convinces you that being seen is the same as being valuable. You post your goals instead of working on them. You announce your plans instead of executing them. You document your progress to get validation instead of actually finishing the journey. The Stoics would look at this obsession and call it what it is: a hunger for external validation. The opposite of inner mastery. Seneca warned, "It is a shameful thing to be weary of inquiry when what we search for is excellent." He meant that it's disgraceful to stop pursuing truth just because you're busy chasing attention. To the Stoics, excellence existed in silence and the work itself, not in its applause. Today, we've reversed that wisdom. We've built a culture where visibility matters more than virtue, and followers matter more than follow-through. But here's the problem. The applause of the crowd is a moving target. One day they cheer you, the next they forget you. And if your sense of worth depends on that applause, you'll spend your life dancing for people who aren't even watching anymore. The Stoics had a different dance, the one you do in silence, for no audience but yourself. Clout gives you the feeling of progress without the substance of it. It's a mirage of accomplishment, a hit of dopamine that feels like growth, but fades in seconds. You post about waking up early, and people praise your discipline. You share a quote about self-improvement, and people call you wise. But none of it replaces the real work, the quiet and glamorous hours when no one's watching. We've built a society obsessed with the performance of virtue. We talk about peace while scrolling through chaos. We share quotes about self-control while reacting to every comment. We tell the world we're focusing on ourselves, even while begging for its validation. The Stoics would have called this slavery, the mind chained to the opinions of others. Here's the truth. The work you do in silence will outlast every post, every comment, every like. The book you read without sharing still changes you. The workout you finish without filming still strengthens you. The kindness you offer without an audience still matters. And those quiet victories, the ones no one claps for, are the ones that actually transform you. When you turn your back on Clout, you stop asking, "Who's watching?" Instead, you start asking, "Am I improving?" You measure success not by recognition, but by integrity. And that shift from performance to purpose is the difference between being noticed for a moment and being respected for a lifetime. Clout is a rigged game because it's built on borrowed metrics. The algorithms decide what gets seen. The crowd decides what gets celebrated, and you, the creator, the dreamer, the doer, end up serving masters who don't even know your name. When your self-worth depends on their approval, you've handed your peace over to strangers. The Stoics called this the greatest form of slavery, dependence on external praise. Marcus Aurelius could have commanded the attention of the entire empire, yet he wrote only to himself. He didn't care to impress, he cared to improve. That's why his private reflections, never meant for publication, are still studied 2,000 years later. He built substance, not spectacle. Turning your back on Clout doesn't mean rejecting visibility. It means rejecting dependence. It means showing your work after it's been done, not performing while you're still learning. It means building something real and letting people see it only when it's worth their time. So ask yourself, if no one could see what I was doing, would I still do it? Would you still create, still train, still study, still improve? If the answer is yes, you've already won. Because that's integrity, doing what's right without needing an audience. Remember this: Clout fades, substance compounds. Every silent or invested in mastery becomes interest paid in peace. And no algorithm can ever delete that kind of wealth. Turning your back on Clout doesn't mean disappearing, it means building differently. It's the difference between planting seeds in a garden and throwing glitter in the air. One quietly grows, the other sparkles for a moment, then fades. The Stoics believed that real achievement doesn't need an audience. It just needs consistency. They practiced virtue for its own sake, not to be admired, but because it aligned with their nature. When you operate from that mindset, your actions become self-sustaining. You work because you love the process, not the praise. You create because you must, not because you're being watched. Here's a modern Stoic challenge. Spend 1 week building something without posting about it. Write, train, learn, or create, but tell no one. Resist the urge to share progress for validation. Instead, let the result be your announcement. When you finally reveal it, it won't just look impressive, it will be impressive. Every time you keep something private, you're reclaiming ownership of your motivation. You're teaching your brain that joy comes from progress, not attention. And that's when you start to feel a quiet kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need proof. Because clout fades faster than character. Likes disappear, comments vanish, algorithms change. But integrity, that stays. So build quietly, let your work speak. And when it does, the world will have no choice but to listen. Here's something no one talks about. While you're busy explaining your plans, defending your choices, and trying to prove your progress, life is quietly preparing you for a comeback. But that comeback can only happen if you protect it. Every setback you're facing, every silent season where no one notices your effort, it's all part of your rebuilding. The Stoics saw this clearly. They knew that growth doesn't happen under the spotlight, it happens in the shadows. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, wrote in private for years, never intending for anyone to read his words. Those writings, found long after his death, became Meditations, one of the most powerful books ever written on self-mastery. He didn't announce his evolution. He lived it. In a world addicted to exposure, privacy has become rebellion. We overshare our goals, our struggles, our emotions, as if broadcasting them makes them more real. But every time you reveal your plans too soon, you drain the energy that was meant to build them. Every explanation becomes a small release of momentum. It's like letting air out of a balloon with every "I'm working on it" post. The Stoics would call this a loss of inner focus, letting validation replace discipline. They believed your comeback story should be written in silence, not performed for sympathy. Because when you finally emerge, the transformation speaks for itself. So if you're in a quiet season right now, don't fight it. You're not being ignored, you're being forged. The modern world doesn't respect silence. It mistakes it for weakness, invisibility, or worse, irrelevance. That's why most people broadcast every small step they take, hoping to prove they're doing something. But in that constant sharing, they give away the very power that could have built their transformation. Here's what the Stoics understood. Greatness doesn't need announcement, it needs attention. Attention to process, attention to effort, attention to becoming. When you divide that attention between the work and the applause, both suffer. Seneca called it the scattering of the soul. He warned that a person constantly explaining themselves to others loses their depth. They become wide but shallow. Their identity stretches across other people's opinions until there's nothing solid left inside. Protecting your comeback story means keeping the most important parts of your life sacred. Not secret, but sacred. Sacred things grew best in silence. Love, strength, mastery, purpose. You don't owe anyone a play-by-play of your healing or your progress. You owe yourself the focus to finish what you started. Think of it like tending a fire. If you keep opening the door to show everyone the flames, the heat escapes. Soon, all you'll have left is smoke and ashes. Keep the door closed. Let it burn hotter, longer, unseen. And when you finally open it again, the world will feel the warmth without needing the explanation. Your comeback story isn't about proving anyone wrong, it's about proving yourself right. The moment you stop performing for the crowd, your life starts aligning with something far more powerful, purpose. And purpose, unlike validation, doesn't need witnesses. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." He didn't say talk about it or announce it. He said be. That single word defines the Stoic way of transformation. Quiet becoming. Every season of growth has a hidden phase of time when no one sees your effort. While others chase recognition, you will be learning in silence, building strength brick by brick. No posts, no announcements, just consistency. That's how real character is built, in solitude. Not applause, but understand this: the silent season can feel lonely. You'll question whether it's working, whether anyone will ever notice. That's when most people quit. They crave proof before progress, applause before results. But you're not most people. You're practicing something rare, inner validation. When you start validating yourself through progress instead of praise, you become unstoppable. You no longer need permission to continue, you just do. And every quiet day of effort becomes a page in the book of your comeback. You may not see the full story yet, but one day you'll look back and realize the silence wasn't wasted time, it was the foundation of everything. Every powerful transformation begins in private. Think about the people who've truly changed their lives: the one who lost the weight, broke the addiction, built the business, or healed from heartbreak. You didn't hear from them for a while, did you? They vanished, and then one day, they returned different. That's because they were busy doing, not displaying. The Stoics would call that the discipline of inner work effort made without the need for witnesses. They believe that constant self-disclosure weakens the will. Each time you tell someone your plans, your brain releases the same satisfaction as if you've already achieved them. And that illusion of completion kills motivation. Seneca warned against it. The more often you talk of virtue, the less you practice it. This is why the most successful transformations happen in silence. You conserve the energy that would have been spent explaining and redirect it into building. You move from performance to production. You stop feeding off attention and start feeding your purpose. Your silence becomes your strategy. It confuses doubters, calms your ego, and amplifies your focus. No noise, no competition, no distraction, just execution. When you protect your comeback story, you reclaim something sacred: the right to grow without being watched, the right to evolve without permission. Because the world doesn't need to see your process, it needs to feel your result. Here's what most people never realize: you can't surprise the world with your transformation if you narrate every step of it. Mystery is power. Silence builds anticipation, and anticipation builds presence. When you disappear to work, people will speculate. But when you return, results will speak with an authority words never could. The Stoics valued restraint over revelation. Epictetus taught his students to let actions announce their philosophy. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. To live by this means to let your discipline do the talking. Let your progress, your calm, your consistency be the proof. No argument, no justification, just demonstration. Protecting your comeback story is about energy conservation. Every time you explain, defend, or overshare, you leak energy meant for creation. That's why Stoics practiced measured speech. They spoke when their words carried purpose, not impulse. It's not secrecy, it's precision. You can apply this today. When you feel the urge to tell people what you're building, don't. Channel that impulse into action instead. When you want to post your next big goal, pause and finish it first. When you feel unseen, remind yourself, you're not supposed to be seen yet. You're becoming. One day, your silence will become the loudest thing about you. Because the world can't ignore someone who has quietly mastered themselves. So here you are, quietly rebuilding while the world scrolls past, distracted by noise. It might feel lonely, but make no mistake, this is the most powerful position you'll ever be in. Because no one expects anything from you right now. And that's your advantage. When you protect your comeback story, you stop chasing the illusion of being understood. You stop needing validation for progress that's still in progress. You realize that the world doesn't need to believe in your potential, only you do. The rest will catch up later. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He knew that every choice and every silence shapes your destiny. Your comeback isn't built in grand gestures, it's built in quiet decisions made over and again when no one is clapping. Waking up early when it's easier to sleep. Refusing to gossip when others do. Focusing on the task instead of the recognition. Those invisible acts of discipline are the architecture of your new life. When the time comes to step back into the world, you won't need to announce your return. Your calm will announce it. Your focus will announce it. Your results will announce it. Because people may forget your words, but they never forget your transformation. Protect your silence. Protect your process. And let the roar of your comeback echo through the very quiet that built it. So, here we are. You've walked through the 7 Stoic rules that can completely reshape the way you live, think, and lead yourself. And if you've made it this far, that already means one thing: you're not here for motivation. You're here for a transformation. Let's take a breath and revisit what we've learned. Rule 1. Starve the noise. You learned that silence isn't weakness. It's power in disguise. By cutting off the constant flood of external opinions, you reclaim your ability to hear yourself again. Because peace doesn't come from controlling the world, it comes from controlling what gets access to your mind. Rule 2. Move like nobody's watching. Freedom begins when you stop performing and start being. The only approval worth earning is from your own conscience. When you act from authenticity instead of fear, your life stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like truth. Rule 3. Keep your energy expensive. You discovered that energy, not time, is your most precious currency. The Stoics taught that saying no is not rejection, it's protection. Every no to distraction is a yes to depth. Spend your energy wisely, and your life will multiply in meaning. Rule 4. Kill the echo chamber. Growth doesn't live in comfort. It lives in contrast. Expose yourself to new ideas, challenge your beliefs, and allow friction to sharpen your mind. True wisdom isn't about always being right, it's about being open enough to keep learning. Rule 5. Watch. Don't react. Reaction is instinct. Response is mastery. You've learned to pause, to breathe, to observe before you act. Because between stimulus and response lies the space where freedom is born. That's where the Stoic lives in, that sacred gap between what happens and how they choose to respond. Rule 6. Turn your back on clout. Visibility without substance is emptiness in disguise. The Stoics taught us to build quietly, to let our results speak. When you stop performing for attention and start creating for a purpose, your work begins to carry real weight. Clout fades, character endures. Rule 7. Protect your comeback story. Every season of silence is preparation for strength. While others perform, you build. While they announce, you evolve. Because the world doesn't need another performer, it needs proof that quiet discipline still works. Now step back and notice the pattern. Every rule returns to one idea: self-command. That's the heart of Stoicism. Not denying emotion, not suppressing desire, but mastering your attention so you can direct it toward what truly matters. In a world that rewards noise, you become rare when you master silence. When others overreact, you observe. When they seek validation, you self-verify. When they chase clout, you build character. And slowly, your life begins to reflect something the modern world has forgotten: stillness with strength. This is how you reclaim your freedom, not by controlling the world, but by controlling your focus within it. Because the moment you stop letting the noise dictate your direction, you start moving toward the life that's truly yours. If these 7 rules resonated with you, don't just agree, apply them. Pick one rule that spoke to your situation right now and start living it today. Silence your phone for the first hour of your morning. Say one clean no this week. Or simply pause before reacting to something that doesn't deserve your peace. Every small act of discipline builds momentum towards self-mastery. And when you're ready to go deeper, stay with us. Here at StoicCraft, we're building a community that values growth over noise, substance over show, and stillness over chaos. If you found strength in this message, show your commitment. Hit that like button not from me, but as a declaration that you choose mastery over distraction. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, modernized for the world we live in now. And leave a comment below with the words, "I choose silence over noise," because the truth is, the quietest people often build the loudest legacies. And when your peace becomes your priority, your life becomes your masterpiece, your comeback starts now. In silence, in focus, in power.